This is Federalist 53, Part 2, and it's actually paragraph 2. And the part that I read to you in Part 1 of this paper is actually right here in this paragraph. In searching for the grounds of this doctrine, I can discover but one, and that is wholly inapplicable to our case. The important distinctions so well understood in America between a constitution established by the people and unalterable by the government, and a law established by the government and alterable by the government, seems to have been little understood and less observed in any other country. Wherever the supreme power of legislation has resided, has been supposed to reside also a full power to change the form of the government. Even in Great Britain, where the principles of political and civil liberty have been most discussed, and where we hear most of the rights of the Constitution, it is maintained that the authority of the Parliament is transcendent and uncontrollable, as well with regard to the Constitution as the ordinary objects of legislative provision. They have accordingly, in several instances, actually changed by legislative acts some of the most fundamental articles of the government. They have in particular, on several occasions, changed the period of election, and on the last occasion, not only introduced septennial in place of triennial elections, but by the same act continued themselves in place 4 years beyond the term for which they were elected by the people. So here again it says our Constitution cannot be changed by state legislators or by the federal legislators. It has to be done by the people. Whereas even in Great Britain, which we think they have some of the most freest institutions in the world, the Parliament thinks it is the supreme authority, not the people. And look what they've done. They've changed the triennial elections, the elections every 3 years, to septennial ones, to one that take place every 7 years. And they've done it not at the end of the Parliament. They've done it right when they're sitting there in the Parliament, which is going to apply to themselves, and they just extended their years they're going to be in Parliament by 4 years without even asking people. He says such a thing is not going to happen in the United States. That's why we're setting the election dates and periods. We're saying every 2 years, and it's not going to be changed by the legislators. If people decide to change it, that's fine. But legislators cannot change it. And attention to these dangerous practices has produced a very natural alarm in the votaries of free government, of which frequency of elections is the cornerstone, and has led them to seek for some security to liberty against the danger to which it is exposed. Some of these people who are criticizing us and are saying, the number of elections that has to be more, you have to have elections every year or every 6 months, they are confused. They're preaching to you liberty, but they are not thinking of security and long-term well-being of the country. Where no constitution paramount to the government either existed or could be obtained, no constitutional security similar to that established in the United States was to be attempted. Some other security, therefore, was to be sought for. And what better security would the case admit than that of selecting and appealing to some simpler and familiar portion of time as a standard for measuring the danger of innovations, for fixing the national sentiment, and for uniting the patriotic exertions. The most simple and familiar portion of time applicable to the subject was that of a year, and hence the doctrine has been inculcated by a laudable zeal to erect some barrier against the gradual innovations of an unlimited government, that the advance towards tyranny was to be calculated by the distance of departure from the fixed point of annual elections. Like we said in part one, he said we are so used to having annual elections that we can't get it out of our mind that when you unite the 13 states, you've got all this vast land, people have got to travel elsewhere, long distances, that we are, just because we are used to 1 year, we can't think, we're not being reasonable to think that 2 years is good for our situation, our new situation. But what necessity can there be of an applying this expedient to a government limited, as the federal government will be, by the authority of a paramount constitution? Constitution is going to rule. The federal government is not going to be the fountain of power, it's the Constitution. And the Constitution, the way it is devised, will stop anybody from thinking ideas of being tyrants over the people. Or who will pretend that the liberties of the people of America will not be more secure under biennial elections, unalterably fixed by such a constitution, than those of any other nation would be, where elections were annual or even more frequent, but subject to alterations by the ordinary power of government. The second question stated is whether biennial elections be necessary or useful. The propriety of answering this question in the affirmative will appear from several very obvious considerations. Again, the next paragraph is going to be something that I talked about in part one that is very important. No man can be a competent legislator who does not add to an upright intention and sound judgment a certain degree of knowledge of the subjects on which he is to legislate. So the persons that we are going to be electing, hopefully, will be of upright intention and sound judgment. They will put what is best for the country above what is best for their locality or community. And then on top of that, in the capital, when they go and mingle, get together with other members of the House of Representatives, they accumulate knowledge and they can serve you better. A part of this knowledge may be acquired by means of information, which lie within the compass of men in private as well as public stations. Another part can only be attained, or at least thoroughly attained, by actual experience in the station, which requires the use of it.